So welcome back to Careers in Discovery. This week I'm joined by Christian Schroeter, Chief Operating Officer and Managing Director at Topas Therapeutics. Lovely to meet you, Christian.
Nice to meet you, Emma. Looking forward to our interview.
Certainly. I suppose a great place to start is to talk a little bit about what you and Topas are up to at the moment and where the business is.
Yeah, so Topas Therapeutics is a clinical stage biotech company based out of Hamburg in Germany. And we are trying to put immune tolerance or reinstating immune tolerance onto the treatment scheme for autoimmune diseases. So in simple words, the immune system needs to be sure to attack foreign agents or dangerous components, but not self-agents.
Yeah.
And actually, probably more difficult for the immune system to make sure that self is not attacked than anything which it has never seen. And that process of defining self is out of control in autoimmune diseases because this attack is mounted. And we have nanoparticles which channel antigenic fragments into the right cells in the liver, which run this process. And we just finished a phase 2A clinical trial, and it's super exciting to be where I am right now.
Really exciting. So from what I've read, the platform sounds very adaptable to a multitude of different conditions. We know it's really expensive to run clinical trials. How do you decide where to start and where to focus?
So currently we run our clinical trial in celiac disease, which is an autoimmune disease, but has an external antigen, gluten.
Yeah.
And in that sense, it is a really nice test case for an autoimmune platform because you can easily stimulate the disease. The patients which come into a clinical trial are on diet.
Yeah.
Prior to a clinical trial, you can actually give them gluten and monitor the immune response. And after treatment, you can do it again. And that's a unique feature of celiac disease, which you don't have in any other autoimmune disease. Think of multiple sclerosis, where the antigen is always there. It comes in phases, so there are more intense and less intense times in a MS patient. So it would require way more patience and way more effort to do a clinical trial. And therefore, celiac disease is really nice. You can do a lot with comparable small patient numbers, and that's why Biotech is an obvious choice to go into celiac disease.
Oh, fascinating.
Disease, yeah.
Really wonderful. And I suppose we'll talk a little bit later about what's next, but I'm fascinated to hear about what those options are. Yeah, wonderful. So tell us, how did you choose a career in science, particularly sort of in the drug discovery world?
So already during late years in school, I was super fascinated by chemistry, biochemistry. My father was a pediatrician out in the backcountry of Germany. So we had that medical atmosphere, if you will.
Yeah.
And I was always interested to understand how does that work if you look even closer. So not the person, not the organ, not the cell, even smaller. And then biochemistry was my choice. It was already clear, I think 2 years before I finished school, that I would go for university and do biochemistry. And I loved the studies. Wonderful classmates, comparably small courses. And at that time, I wanted to become a professor in biochemistry somewhere and do basic research and understand the world and diseases better. So it was a real, scientific interest. I wanted to.
Yeah. And a very early passion. Throughout your studies, when did you become aware of industry? You talked about the kind of the path being academic, which is often the case when I'm talking to people. That's the path that they presume they will take.
Yeah.
When did industry become an option for you?
A real option comparably late. So I had already started my PhD. I was already 2 years into the PhD, and I still remember. I still remember the moment. So I had done a big experiment. I did my PhD in basic research in immunology, antigen processing. So I'm actually closer to my PhD now than I've ever been in my whole career. And we needed an external lab for some analysis of the samples I had produced over a period of 3 months.
Yeah.
And the person who does the analysis calls and says, hey, check the expiry date of one of the chemicals you've used. I'm pretty sure you used expired materials and can't analyze your samples.
Oh my gosh.
So I did, and he was right. It meant another 3 months of work repeating the whole sequence.
No.
And at that point in time, next to the telephone, there was a magazine where on the back page, Boston Consulting advertised for scientists in consulting. So I took that thing, went to my office and wrote an application.
Did you? Wow. That's really special to know that exact moment. That's a great memory to keep.
And on the way to they had an introductory weekend for scientists in Hamburg, funnily. And on the way there, I read an advertisement in the newspaper for a job at Merck.
Yeah.
And applied there as well. And in the end, I ended up with Merck.
With Merck, yeah, I was going to say this is a lovely transition to talk through your career story and those most formative parts.
Yeah, and perhaps, of course, the decision was a bit more reflected than that immediate reaction. But what I realized is that as a scientist, if you stay in academia, you're the expert on a very, very small area.
Right.
And that's not who I am. I'm more of a generalist. I love to be good enough in the topics I do. I'm happy to have others who are better and I can put together to work with me and with my team. But I'm not the person who necessarily wants to stay super focused on a small area, right? I want to see more different.
Too curious. Yeah, more curious.
Yes.
So you joined Merck and you had a wonderful career with them. Talk me through some of those most formative parts, because it was a long time.
Yeah, so I was often asked when I joined, I finished my studies in the end of the 90s. That was the time of that first biotech bubble at the stock markets. Everybody was founding biotech companies, and all my peers from the biochemistry course went into, or most of my peers went into biotech. That was cool. And going to Big Pharma was totally uncool. Everybody asked me, but it just felt right. It was the right environment. The people were right. The job offer was right. It was pharmaceutical development, so comparably late in research, perhaps also driven by my discussions at home all the time that I know research is nice, but it needs to arrive at the patient's bed.
Yeah, in their hands, yeah.
Yeah, so it was between research and production, which was really nice. And at the time at Merck, I have to say, we had a wonderful environment for people starting new because we were allowed to grow and given responsibilities very early on. Also project management related responsibilities, being representative of pharmaceutical development in big project teams. I know I was with a company for less than 2 months and I was the nominated representative of the team in a project development project, clinical development. And that was really so, and a lot of courses. So the beginning was as I had hoped for.
Yeah.
And gave a lot of learning and growth opportunity.
That must do a lot for your confidence when people are putting that level of trust in you when you're so early on in a company.
Yes, and also allows to, my interest to see more, to see different things, to experience different things, right? Starting from still remembering the first time I walk into my new lab, 3 technicians who know way better than me what to do, asking me to tell them what to do.
Oh, really?
It was like a bit of a challenge in the beginning, but also told me this is what you need to deal with. It's really interesting. It's out of the comfort zone, but
I was going to say, how do you personally, what attributes are important to be able to push you outside of the comfort zone to succeed in that way?
I think what's pushing me out of my comfort zone every time is that interest to try something new, to see something else, to perhaps also do slightly crazy things, right? A lot of people called me crazy with my last career step of leaving more than 20 years of a super safe job at Merck and go into Biotech without needing to go, right?
Yeah.
I think that drives me into the situations where I learn and grow. And then when you're there, at least for me, it's all about connecting to the people, being authentic, right?
Yeah.
Admitting that you don't know. I couldn't tell the person who does HPLC for 15 years as a technician that I would be better in doing HPLC. I could tell that I did some HPLC in my PhD and that we used the same machine as they did. So I have a rough idea, but they should better tell me what they do exactly because I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that integrating way of working was super helpful. And it's something you don't learn at university, unfortunately.
Yes. Yeah, those social interactions and being human.
Yes.
Yeah, really important. So you were focusing more on the manufacturing side, and then I'm right in thinking you progressed into more of an strategic operational role. We're even looking after the APAC region at one point in Merck.
Yeah, so it was actually a super interesting time at Merck. And if I wouldn't have had all the different opportunities of changing jobs, I would have probably not stayed as long.
Yeah.
I'm not the person to be in the same role for 15 years. That's not me. And within Merck, I was moving around quite often. I think the longest period I was in one job was when I was heading a sterile manufacturing plant for 5 years as the plant manager. That was probably the longest stance. Also the opportunity to go abroad. We lived in Canada for 2 years, which was really cool. Up in Edmonton in the cold.
Lovely.
And then you mentioned the APAC assignment. So I was responsible for manufacturing sites within healthcare of Merck in India and Pakistan. So we had manufacturing sites in Goa, in Mumbai, in Karachi, and in Quetta. So quite an exotic portfolio of sites, comparably big sites. In total, that was way above 1,000 people working there.
Wow.
And what fascinated me when the role came into discussion was the cultural aspect, right? I had just come back from Canada and I grew up in an international family. I'm half Finnish. I have 2 adopted brothers, one of them chocolate brown skin. So I love the international environment and I'm fascinated by how different people think and feel. And that was the reason to go for India and Pakistan. And also that it's a little bit crazy. And those are things I like.
I love your follow the crazy. That's a good motto for life. So what has it taught you? What did you learn from working within all these different environments?
I think in the bigger scheme of things, I learned that where we are, things are good. Right? Of course, we have challenges, we have issues, we have topics to deal with, but compared to challenges in other parts of the world, we shouldn't complain too loudly. And we should also be comparably relaxed in attacking problems, right? Of course, there's a sense of urgency in getting things done, but there's no reason for panic of dealing with issues. There are surprises, there are things go wrong. It's development. But then the ability to stay calm, to put it into perspective, to also be open to other ways of dealing with things, other ways of thinking about things, and trying to combine them. I think that was the biggest learning on an interpersonal level, if you will.
Yeah, yeah. I suppose, again, it comes back to that being human and being humble and understanding the journey's been different for everybody.
Yeah, and the environment is different for everybody, right? If someone grows up in India where saying no is considered to be impolite, and if you have a choice between being polite and being honest, you decide for being polite because of the cultural background. I know generalizing here, but just to put it a bit into perspective, then if you deal with people like that, you need to be open to their different approach, and you can't change them, but you can change the way you interact with them.
Yes.
That's where I think I learned a lot in those 3.5 years in being responsible for India and Pakistan. I never really lived there, but I spent a lot of time in India. I didn't spend as much in Pakistan because, of course, that's always difficult, but I've been there a number of times.
Yeah. That's a lovely life experience to have gained, as well as the professional experience, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
So after such a solid career with Merck, but ever-changing roles and continuous learning, how did you arrive at the decision to leave? You've said that some of your colleagues said you were crazy. What formed that decision?
So number one, I think that idea of going into biotech was the seed was in the very first day of my career, because at the time that was what everybody else, at least in my perception, did, and I was the outlier going to bigger pharma. Then the 2 years in Canada, that was actually as close as you can probably get to biotech within a bigger pharma organization, because Merck had bought a part of a biotech company in Edmonton 2 years before I went there as the site director. Because for financial reasons, we needed our collaboration partner for a development project, phase 3 breast cancer. And so we were 40 people in the middle of nowhere in Alberta. The next colleague was 4 hours away by plane.
Wow.
So I was responsible for the site and the development program with a lot of external partners. But I was my own boss, more or less, out there. And I really enjoyed that. And coming back into the big organization in Darmstadt was a real challenge. And since then, it was more or less clear that I would try and see if a good opportunity comes to discuss and see whether it fits. I didn't pursue it in a way of saying I really planned to leave Merck. I didn't actively reach out. I was probably a bit opportunistic, but I had a lot of discussions in the 10 years I was back from Canada, or 9 years until I left. Many of those didn't work out, right? I didn't have to leave. So it had to be a company where I believe in the technology, where I feel I can work with the team I see, where I also feel that there is some reasonable financing behind it. Also, the own financial situation needed to be okay. So there were a lot of cases which didn't work out. But then early 22, everything fit together.
And then the new story started, the new crazy.
We started.
Thinking back, throughout your lens and the experiences you've had, what one piece of advice would you give to people who are early on in their career, or they're looking to move out of academia or finishing their PhD?
So one thing, and I have 4 kids between 12 and 23, so we had a lot of discussions about where do you want to go. My advice always is to say, do something you like. It's like if you choose a hobby, right? You enjoy, you learn, you get better, you do well because you like what you do, right? I'm playing the cello for more than 40 years already, and I still believe it's the most beautiful instrument. And that's why I love doing it. I sit down for practice if need be. And the same in jobs, right? If you do something you really like and you love, then you will be good at it. And whether when you start your studies, this is giving you the career plans you have. I don't know, my career of becoming a professor was a good one when I started studying, but turned out to be not the right one later in the career, right?
Yeah. I suppose you also have to keep your eyes open and not be afraid to seek out the opportunities as they arise.
That's the other thing of saying, being bold. And you know, when I applied at Merck, of course, there were a lot of things in the advertisement where I said, no, I don't fulfill these requirements. I do these and these and these. So I think it's good enough to apply. And it worked out, right? So
and that's really important, because I hear a lot of people would feel that they have to meet 100% of the criteria. So that's a really important piece of advice.
Yeah, for me, I would probably even think that if I already fulfill all criteria for a job, then it might not be the right job for me, because I'm looking for a growth opportunity. I want to do something new. I want to get out of the comfort zone, at least for a certain while. I love to come back to the comfort zone every now and then. No question. But if I would take on a new assignment, it has to be interesting. It has to be a growth opportunity. It has to be a little bit crazy. Then that's the right thing for me to do. And I might have been a bit more bold with this early in my career, right? I think I was a bit too much trying to please everybody, listening too much on what other people think or believe I should do. Meanwhile, I listen. I take it into account, but it doesn't shape anymore what I do and where I go. It's information I need for my decision, but it's not shaping information necessarily.
Yeah, take it as part of the due diligence.
Yes.
Arrive at your own decision. So tell me, what's next? What's next for Christian? What's next for Topas Pharma?
So for Topas, it's super exciting right now, and it's a place in the development of a company I've not been in on this side. So in my time at Merck, I've been on the other side in due diligence teams and looked at other pharma companies. For example, the one I was in with in Edmonton, I had been involved in the early due diligences and early project work. But now being in Topas, we are fundraising, right? So as every biotech, you finish clinical trials, it's wonderful, but your financing is always until the next inflection point. End of clinical trial is inflection point. So you need to find money to take you to the next inflection point or a partner, right? So that is really cool and an exciting environment I've not been in before. I learn a lot. I'm in the center of what's happening, right? We're an executive team of 5 people. I'm one of them. And that's really a nice, interesting and challenging learning opportunity right now.
Yeah. How has sitting on the other side of the table supported you to be as successful as you can be at this point with the fundraising?
So number one, especially if it's bigger pharma companies, I know sometimes I see myself sitting on the other side of the call, right? It's like, oh, I think I know how much they know, what their background is, what they will be looking for, what the standard questions would be. And I think almost everything I've learned across my 20 years at Merck is super helpful now, right? Technical expertise, of course, development expertise as well, but also all the personal development, the cultural topics, right? We're a team of around 20 people, and we have 10 nationalities. So it is a topic which I like and which is also helpful and important to do the job I'm doing, right?
Yeah. Gives you an insight into the audience, and you can speak the same language, can't you?
Yeah, and you have to, the only thing you can adapt is how you approach others. And with that, of course, you change the way they they come back.
Yeah.
But I have to be the adaptive one in
Yes.
the environment without losing myself, right? I clearly have my opinion, and I clearly have the final call in many decisions, yes, and
Yeah.
I'm open and clear about that. But in the way to get to the best possible decision, I can't predefine it. I have to be open to collect input.
Yeah. They're very, very exciting times.
Oh yes, oh yes, and also really nice to see that if what we currently see in the clinical trial can be confirmed in a bigger trial with a broader patient population, it will definitely help patients a lot, right? And the fact, as we mentioned earlier, that it's a platform, so we can adapt it to other diseases, and we've shown that it works in principle now, gives a pathway to comparably broad disease modifying or even disease treating opportunities in autoimmune. That's really cool.
It's really exciting, definitely. Yeah. Well, I wish you all the best, and fingers crossed for some positive funding to come your way, and look forward to watching you progress through clinic. Thank you so much for sharing your career with us, Christian.
Thank you, Emma. It was a pleasure.